Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Monday, June 16th, 2018. I am Dave Biddle. Very happy to be joined by Steve Helwagen. Steve, Chris Holtmann and the basketball Buckeyes, of course, landed five-star point guard DJ Carton over the weekend. Number 2 point guard in the country in the 2019 class, number 21 overall player, a young man out of the state of Iowa. I'm going to ask you about how Ohio State ended up landing him. But first, can you take the listeners through? It was pretty much a meteoric rise for this young man, was it, because of the AAU circuit and all that? Just talk about his rise from maybe a guy that was thought of as a good recruit to a guy that became one of the top recruits in the country.
Yeah, it's been an exciting, I think, spring and summer for DJ Carton. He's from Bettendorf, Iowa. And people would say, well, why wouldn't he go to Iowa? He's only lived in Iowa for the past 3 years, so he's not a born and bred Iowan, as they would say. Did visit Indiana and Michigan here recently, and then Ohio State. I don't know that anybody had ever crystal balled him to Ohio State until midday on Saturday, when it's a funny story. I was playing in a golf outing, and Brian Snow, our recruiting expert, called me and said, get a story ready because DJ Carton is going to go to Ohio State. And thankfully, he was using the Tipton Edits people to put together his graphic or whatever, and it took him 45 minutes or an hour. So I had a little bit of lead time, and I'm sitting there at the golf outing, writing the story, getting it ready to go. And, excuse me, we're all anxiously watching his Twitter feed, and then it dropped, and so we were able to post our story once he had dropped it. We were not going to preempt his announcement, because that has typically been, I think in 98% of the cases, been our MO to wait for the kid to but it was very curious that Jeff Rabjohns, our compatriot over at Indiana, who stirred up a little bit of dust about Holtmann abandoning Carton on his visit and going down to Georgia. Which led rise to speculation. Does Ohio State really want him? He's Indiana all the way. And, he did have to tweet out a half hour before the announcement came down that his prediction was now Ohio State. So, thanks, Jeff, for that. But at any rate, great kid. People are asked, well, he doesn't sign until November. Would he change his mind? It seems unlikely that he would. And, he played very well at the NBA Players Association Top 100 camp. He did outstanding there. I want to say he was at one of the Team USA tryouts for either probably the 17U team, and did very well there and was cut. It was crazy. You would get tweets and reports every day. Well, DJ Carton did well again. And by the end of the thing, they cut it from 35 down to 18, down to 12 players. And he made the cut to 18, but did not make the cut down to 12, I believe. And, if somebody plays that great in the tryout, why don't you just put them on the team? But again, as we know, those things are all predetermined by Nike or whoever, by player rankings. So in reputation and who do you know, that type thing. So even a great tryout didn't put him on the Team USA, but he is a guy who has great anticipation. He can take over a game when he has to and score points in bunches, and he has made a humongous jump, the people say who have watched him week in and week out. Strength and athleticism, really worked hard. He's about 6'2", in that range, will attack the rim, and also an outstanding defender as well. So they're getting the full combination, it sounds to me, at the point guard position. I think people are excited. Chris Holtmann and his staff have done a great job of solidifying the backcourt. They put the Band-Aids on it by getting Keyshawn Woods from Wake Forest as a transfer for 1 year, and then C.J. Walker, the transfer from Florida State, for the following 2 years. But now they've added the depth that they need. Obviously, Carton has 1 more year of high school left, but theoretically he and Walker will play, one behind the other or side by side at times even the following 2 years, which is exciting. So, and of course they had the guards they took this year with Luther Muhammad, Dwayne Washington. So they're looking good, and for 2020 they've got offers out to Dominic Penn, Zeb Jackson, who's a high-scoring guard. I'd say Penn's a 1 and Jackson's a 2. And so, I would think they're going to land one or both of them for 2020 as well.
I'm going to ask you one more question about DJ Carton, and we'll move on to more basketball recruiting. Then we'll talk some football. Don't worry, football fans, we're going to get to some football. But big, huge weekend for basketball. Explain to the listeners, what Ohio State did in this recruitment, what they were able to, how they were able to really get a relationship with this young man, and how they were able to sell him from what you've been able to gather, just the outstanding recruiting job that Chris Holtmann and his staff did.
Well, I think they're great relationship people. I think it starts there. Holtmann, Peden, Schrage, Terry Johnson, they're people who will look you in the eye, shake your hand, and talk to you as a human being. They're not there to sell you a bill of goods, it does not seem. And, they make it a very much hands-on approach. I think they built this relationship starting from their time at Butler and carried it over a year ago when they moved to Ohio State. I thought was very interesting. I asked some people around the program, what's up with Holtmann leaving town? And they said, well, the kid wanted to spend time with the players. So it was perfect timing on Thursday for Coach Holtmann to leave town and go down and watch some day games. And they said, the players took him to the water park. And I said, oh, my goodness, the water park, just for fun time during the day. And when he said water park, I was like, I think that makes sense this, because Bloomington and Ann Arbor, to my knowledge, don't have water parks. So
go Zoombezi Bay. Way to go Zoombezi Bay.
Yeah, I think Holtmann needs to buy a lifetime pass to Zoombezi Bay for this. So I think the other thing is when he got back, there was a tweet from Joey Lane with he and Holtmann, and they were standing on the sidewalk on High Street, obviously in front of one of those great restaurants there on the Cap. And guess what, guys? Bloomington and Ann Arbor ain't got that either. So I think sometimes, it's a personal approach, but it's also, I think the city sold itself, that this is a cosmopolitan city that's got things to do for, kids who are 18 to 21 years old, and great amenities like, Hyde Park or there's 3 or 4 great restaurants down there. Everybody knows where I'm talking about by the convention center, but it was obvious that's where they went to dinner. They had the dinner the night before was at Chris Holtmann's house with the entire team and DJ Carton. So that'll just tell you. I mean, they put the personal touch on this thing from start to finish. I think, Beeline, what he's done at Michigan, they were in the championship game for the second time this past year. That's great. They got a great program going. Archie Miller's trying to get a restart going there at Indiana. We'll see how that goes. But you got Jerome Hunter, who everybody says is going to be a monster there at Indiana. But right now Ohio State is competing, and I think it's fun that these Big Ten schools, at some point somebody's going to break through. And Ohio State is starting to position itself as the team that could break through and win the Big Ten's first national championship since 2000 with Michigan State. The Buckeyes are putting players in position. And I know one thing we wanted to touch on, who else it would be, E.J. Liddell from Illinois is probably target number 1 for this team. He's a 6'7" power forward. By his own admission, he and Alonzo Gaffney would be outstanding together because Gaffney's probably more of a 3 and Liddell would be more of a 4. So in this class, you'd be covering the 1, the 3, and the 4, and I think that's pretty good. I think Gaffney could also play the 4 if he had to, but I think Gaffney's going to be in town this week. All Ohio hosts the Nike Summer Championship out on the east side. All Ohio Red will be there, so if anybody wants to see Gaffney in action, we'll try and get the times and the dates for that.
I know Liddell's friend and former high school teammate, a young man that was a senior at his high school this year, is going to Wright State, a kid named Malachi Smith. They won the state title out there in Illinois. So maybe that'll help. I'll have a buddy an hour down the road if he goes to Ohio State. But
exactly.
Just elaborate a little bit on E.J. Liddell. Do you think is Ohio State the leader right now? Who is it? Missouri, Illinois? Who's maybe the biggest threat to Ohio State?
Dave, I talked to him. He was on campus for an unofficial visit a few weeks back, and when I talked to him, he said he had no plans to make visits anywhere else. But Missouri is pushing really hard. Kansas State, Iowa, Illinois in particular, they are in desperate need of talent to try and jumpstart that program. They've been down for the last 5 years or so, and I think Underwood is the coach there, and he's working really hard to try and push for Liddell. I think Missouri is going to work really hard as well. I think he is coming to Ohio State for an official visit. He's got it scheduled. This just came out this past weekend. September the 1st when the Ohio State football team opens up against Oregon State. He will be on campus, so he'll be one of those smiling, happy people down on the track at about 11:30 before the game, and he's going to get a full idea of the scope and the size and the reach of the Ohio State University when he is among the 105,000 people or however many show up singing the Carmen, Ohio before the first game of the Ohio State football season. That ought to make a pretty good impression, I think, on E.J. Liddell.
And I think they got to take him to the water park, too.
Yeah, it's still Labor Day weekend, Dave. On Sunday, they should still be open and then close on Monday, or at least go to limited, it would be limited, just weekends. But I think on Sunday, they should be wide open. Let's check the hours on that. I bet they're open 11 to 7 on that Sunday.
If not, Chris Holtmann needs to pull some strings and get them to open. That might be an NCAA violation. Don't do that.
Turn the water on. Yeah.
Great stuff. Let's finish the show talking some football. Big Ten Media Days kick off a week from today in Chicago. Ohio State's all of its obligations are a week from tomorrow. So July 24th, next Tuesday, all of Ohio State's stuff. I just want to talk about the wide receivers on today. So this group of wide receivers, Steve, is the deepest, most veteran group of wide receivers I can remember at Ohio State. I mean, they've got a trio of fifth-year seniors, with Johnny Dixon and Paris Campbell and Terry McLaurin. I mean, they've got a fourth-year junior in K.J. Hill. They've got guys, I still think of young guys, juniors, Austin Mack and Ben Victor, that are not young guys anymore. I mean, those guys, so all the six that I mentioned, the top six are all juniors, fourth-year juniors or fifth-year seniors. Then they got C.J. Saunders in there. He's a fourth-year junior. He's listed as a senior, but he's actually a fourth-year junior. I think C.J. Saunders has to play, but he's the seventh guy right now. They got other talent behind him. What do you make of this wide receiving core?
I think it's very exciting. I think you've got guys who still have things that they want to prove. One thing that I hope that they would get away from is the pigeonholing of guys as you're the H, you're the split end, you're the flanker. Because I think Paris Campbell and K.J. Hill are two of their top 3 or 4 receivers, and they've got them both at the H. Now, it did work out last year because Paris Campbell was in and out of the lineup, and maybe this is how they won it because there's so much running involved with that H position. But I think those two guys, K.J. Hill was their best all-around receiver, in my opinion, last year. Paris Campbell, probably the most dynamic, a guy that could take a short play and turn it into a big play. Terry McLaurin caught the deep ball against Wisconsin. And I was down there on the sideline with Matt Andrews, who does the sideline reporting for the Cotton Bowl against USC, and they just screwed around. They got ahead 17-0. I think after there was a pick six there. Did Webb have a pick six to make it like 17-0? Something along those lines, or a fumble, I don't recall, but they were ahead 17-0. They're messing around with USC, and I'm like, go over the top to Terry McLaurin and end this farce. And they never did. And I just don't understand it. I mean, if you got a guy that's got that kind of speed, why you're not throwing to him over the top once a quarter doesn't make any sense to me. Johnny Dixon was a guy, I mean, some of the touchdowns Johnny Dixon scored, you just sit there and you scratch your head because, he would just, they would spread the field out. He would find a seam where there was nobody and get behind the defender where there was nobody. He's had all these health issues. You wouldn't think he's got the athleticism to beat people deep or do this or whatever. But for some reason, all the guy does is score touchdowns. And he's a veteran, knows the little tricks and trades of he may be their best technician. I don't know, but he trailed off at the end of the year. He was hurt. Ben Victor is a guy who's got NFL ability. He's like Randy Moss or an NFL body, I guess. I don't know about ability. If they can get him open in the red zone, he could honestly score 10 or 12 touchdowns if Dwayne Haskins or Tate Martell are on top of their game. He's a guy, but is he an NFL wide receiver? Heavens, no, he is not. Because between the 20s, he doesn't make very many plays at all. So they got to round out his game and get him going to where he can be a 40, 50 catch a year guy. Austin Mack is kind of, I think, a more explosive version of K.J. Hill. I think he's an all-around receiver who can do some great things. But Hill, to me, has got the best hands, And then you got Jalen Harris waiting in their wings. You mentioned C.J. Saunders. Elijah Gardner is a guy down the line who may pay off one day, but, again, he's buried behind so many people. And then you're adding Jalen Gill, Cameron Babb, Blue Smith, and Chris Olave, I think, are all part of this. And you had Cameron Brown, too, although he may be lining up as a defensive back to start his career. So it is exciting. I mean, you've got, as you said, as deep a group. I'm looking at my list. They put Saunders on scholarship. That's 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 guys for 3 spots at wide receiver. I think they got enough to fill out a 4 deep and even maybe a 5 deep at one of those positions.
Great stuff, as always, from Steve Helwagen. Thank you for the wisdom, Steve, and thank you all listeners out there for tuning in to the show. I appreciate it. Hope you have a great day. Let's hear that Buckeye swag, best day band in the land.